Stop the insanity. Get your focus back onto what really matters in life. Your faith, your family, your finances, and your future. Sit back, listen, and change the trajectory of your life. You are listening to the Money for Life podcast. Let's welcome your hosts, Teresa Kuhn and Rick Sapio.
Hello, everyone. This is Rick Sapio with Teresa Kuhn for another edition of Money for Life. Like the four. Those are four important things, hopefully for you as well. We're going to talk about my favorite topic. I don't think you've ever heard me say my favorite topic. We're going to talk about 3 operating values for your business and personal life. Think about everything in those realms: your income, your health, your weight, your relationships, etc. Those 2 domains, business and personal life, we're going to talk about simplicity, probability, and leverage as operating values. So, Teresa, the first time you heard about simplicity, probability, and leverage was how many years ago? And how did it land the first time you heard about it?
I heard about it 8 years ago. I had no idea what you were talking about. I was familiar with values-based decision-making, like operating from a perspective of values, but simplicity, probability, and leverage. If I broke it down, simplicity, I know what that means. Probability, I know what that means. Leverage, but how do they work together? And I think you are best known by your peers and colleagues and the world, really, based on values-based decision-making. You are world renowned with those 3 words. So let's go ahead and dig in, because this is a really deep topic.
Okay, so values-based decision-making is all about creating a life by design in which you operate from your set of values. And everybody's going to have a unique set of values, just like everybody has unique DNA, we hope, unless you have an identical twin or you were made in China. But we believe that everyone should have these 3 values that make up their 7 or 8 or 9 in their family and their business: simplicity, probability, and leverage. So let's dig in on each one. The quote for this was actually born from something that stopped me in my tracks a long time ago. And I love the quote by Oliver Wendell Holmes. He said, "I wouldn't give a fig for the simplicity on this side of complexity, but I would give my life for the simplicity on the other side of complexity." You really have to think about that. And I think about my mentor, Reinhold, who's 92. He has had immense business success. He's been married over 60 years. He's got great grandkids, great great grandkids. He has a massive life, but it's a simple life. That simple life over here is very different than the simple life over here of, say, someone who got into drugs and robs stores and can't keep a job or pay their bills or etc. That's one way of having a simple life. But this is another way of having a simple life where you've got fulfillment.
I would add to that, Rick, because when we first met, I borrowed your values because they were so clear and compelling. Mine weren't that compelling at the time. I don't remember what they were, but they weren't as compelling as yours. So I just went ahead and borrowed it. My understanding of simplicity was not having complexity or chaos. And you gave the example of the guy who's a drug addict and robs stores, whatever. I don't know how many people can relate to that story unless they've got, that as a history, which is okay, as long as they've transformed and changed their life. But for me, it was complexity, constantly having a complicated life, lots of things going on, or just a lot of chaos. We all know families that have a lot of chaos in their life. We know business owners, entrepreneurs that have a ton of chaos going on. That's understanding the opposite of simplicity gave me an understanding of what you meant when it came to simplicity.
Yeah, I love that analogy. Thanks for clearing it up. Yes, I was trying to say, most people's eyes, simple life is a life in which you don't really do that much and you don't get that far. But yes, contrasting that with the typical American life, thousands of apps, they get up in the morning, the first thing you have to grab your cell phone, you're constantly getting pinged, you got multiple things on your calendar competing with each other, no time for relationships. The average American parent, sadly, in one-on-one conversation with their child, one-on-one with their child. So if you have 4 kids, that would be 4 conversations. The average eyeball-to-eyeball conversations in America per day between one parent and one child is less than 30 seconds. That
Mm.
is sick. That's how complicated and complex our lives have gotten. I'm not talking about when you're driving and they're in the back seat, or you're taking them to a game and they've got a hamburger dripping sauce on their lap. That doesn't count. I'm talking about you looking them in the eye like I'm looking you in the eye, and them looking you back, and you making eyeball to eyeball contact in conversation. It's gone. So unless you embrace what we're talking about, you're not going to be able to imprint your kids with these values. So let's talk about it. I'm going to use the example in my family: simplicity, probability, and leverage. I'm using the example of my wife and I. Every Monday night at 7:30, we go out to dinner. We go generally to the same one or two places. The kids know, the babysitter knows, the employees know, everyone knows. It's been going on for 15 years every Monday. We even went out to dinner after we had a baby on Sunday. We brought a 1-day old to dinner because we don't violate it. Why? It's simple. Most couples are like, hey, you want to go out to dinner? Well, I don't know. Can we get a babysitter? What about this? What about that? Oh, what if they're closed? What if it's busy? If you put a permanent schedule in place for everything, it's simple. It's highly probable that it's going to happen, and it's leverageable. So simplicity kind of speaks for itself. Cut the chaos. Get rid of that crap sitting in a storage facility that you're never going to open up. Clean out your closets. Get rid of all the stuff in your office and under your bed and all that crap. Get off the boards you don't belong in. Get out of the toxic business relationships. Simplify. Now let's move to probability. Probability is unique value. For me, this unique value means when you make a decision, it has to increase the probability that you hit the stated objective. Most people in their family, let's do this, let's try this sport, let's try that sport, let's add this friend, let's add that friend, let's have a dinner party, let's keep our schedules packed, let's have our kids run around like chickens with their heads cut off, let's add this skill, let's add this training, let's add this tutoring. And life is a chaotic mess. My wife and I have one question we ask when we're about to add something to our kids' lives. Will this decision increase the probability of the stated objective? And in this case, one of the objectives is to raise an independent, entrepreneurial, God-fearing 18-year-old. And I promise you that travel sports where they're in the back seat on their headphones, playing video games or whatever, and I'm doing that all over the country, that's not increasing independence, that's increasing dependence. So I say to my son often, my goal is to create an independent, entrepreneurial, God-fearing 18-year-old. So that's why we don't have a TV in the house. That's why you have to work hard to get money in your savings and we pay you for the chores. That's why we have family dinner every night. That's why we didn't do any team sports at all until you were 11 years old, and on and on and on. When you put your decisions through that frame, you're making highly probable decisions for that objective. Let's talk about this in business. People start businesses, they try this, they try that, let's do this, let's do that. They don't have an objective. If the objective is to sell the business in 5 years for X amount, you're going to make decisions consistent with that objective if probability is a value. Probability is massive. It's why you and I are doing the 100-year savings solution and why we have a podcast, because we want to increase the probability that we attract like-minded people who are conservative, who are long-term oriented, who don't like to take risks in the market, who want to put their money with a 100-year-old insurance company that pays tax-free. It increases that probability by doing this. So oftentimes people say, hey, why don't we advertise on social media? And all of a sudden, all these leads that don't fit come to their company. And guess what? They're lowering the probability. So how does probability land? I'm going to ask you from the perspective of somebody who's never been exposed to this. What are they thinking right now?
I think what they're thinking is probability. Like, that's more statistics. Like, how can I bring that into my life? And I think you have to start with the objective. For you, the overarching objective for your family was to have a family that was cohesive, a wonderful family life where the family structure itself benefits instead of the objective being something different. And so since that was the overarching objective, the objective below that was raising independent kids within that peaceful family objective. So you've got to have the objective first in order to understand what's going to give you a higher probability of meeting that objective.
What's interesting about what you're saying, you're dead on. Most families don't have an objective. They just don't. I envision my wife and I together 50 years from now with great grandkids around. If you don't have that image or objective, that's one objective of many we can come up with, then you're just operating in a vacuum. And it's like the freaking matrix. The American culture is locked in a matrix of frenetic activity, not linked to any values, not linked to anything long term. Got to have that car, got to have that watch, got to have that clothes, got to have that XYZ brand, Dolce Cabana, whatever the hell those names are. I don't even know because it's not important to me. But it's this frenetic. You got to be in sports, got to do this. But when you think about it from this value of probability, then you do something like I decided to do. It came to me. I'm not a genius. I went to the headmaster of the best school in Dallas and I said, when you see an amazing family, like the best families that you could imagine you've ever seen in your life, what do? And he told me they have family dinners every night. They don't give their kids any electronics. There's no TV in the house. They focus on martial arts to build discipline and their bodies. And they don't do team sports. And they play chess and they play a musical instrument. They speak a foreign language. Ding, 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 ding. It's so obvious. So then why the hell do families embrace low probability activities? Why do they do that? Why do they let their kids eat whatever they want and get fat? And then they set them up for a life of difficulty health wise and emotionally because they're overweight. So probability also works well in business. I'll use an example. Southwest Airlines said, if we're going to grow in airlines fast, this is a tough business, we're going to make some high probability decisions. We're going to only do one plane, Boeing 737, and we're only going to do one type of flight, point to point. And we're going to start in Austin, Dallas, and Houston, like a triangle. That radically increased their probability of success. In your business, you need to be making high probability decisions. The high probability decision that you and I made was we wanted the objective to be that we focused on older, healthy, conservative clients. Those are people that have a history of success. And that's what we focused on. Sure, we can probably sell products to anybody, but that isn't going to give us a high probability of building a successful company with aligned values that kind of creates a flywheel, as Jim Collins would call it. So probability is a consciousness. It's a value that you embed in all your decisions. And what happens to me, and I'll admit it, I know when I'm making a low probability decision, like a hiring decision in my company, I'm like, oh, they're going to make us a lot of money, but they don't really align with all our values. And bam, I get hit every time. And you've seen me through some of these painful employee decisions.
I have. I've heard about them and they are painful. And you know why it's more painful for you than others, I think, is the fact that you've got a filter from which to make decisions. And when you vary from it, it's going to slap you in the face. I think most people don't have those values spelled out. And so they've got stuff hitting them in the face and they don't understand why. So I think that's the difference.
Yep. So let's move to leverage. This is a little bit harder, but I see it's funny with you as my partner and even with my wife, you guys don't think spatially. I think very spatially. And so when I say leverage, what I see clearly in my mind is I see leverage being defined as bringing things into your life, ideas, businesses, relationships that are already associated with you. You want to leverage existing infrastructure, existing technology, existing relationships, existing businesses. What people do is they got all these things in place, and then they say, well, let's build a building in Anchorage. It's like, well, how does that leverage anything? So that's why when you meet people, oftentimes you meet people and you fall in love with them instantly because they're leveraging some aspect. Maybe it could be organizations you belong to, or they go to the same church as you, or they're in the same neighborhood. I don't know. But leverage is about extending one level beyond where you are. It could be a big extension, but it's not bringing chaos into your life. So leverage is all about taking existing to the next level. Tell me if that's clear to you as someone hearing this for the first time.
If I was hearing it for the first time, I would need, I think, additional examples. So I'm going to give you a couple. successful business owner, let's say a dentist who's got multiple practices, and all of a sudden he decides he's going to be a landlord. He's going to own his real estate, which his CPA says that's a great idea. So let's build some shopping centers, or let's go buy some shopping centers, because we could have the storefront for a dental practice, and then we can be landlords to a lot of different businesses. What happens immediately to their cash reserves, to their liabilities, to the management, to chaos in terms of their business?
And what you know, Teresa, just like everybody listening, if you go back to the year 1900, even further back, about every 10 years, there is a massive business disruption. It happens all the time. Just look, 1900, 1907, 1919, 1929, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, oil embargo, the crash of 87, crash of 99, 9/11, 2008 crash, coronavirus, name them. And why the hell are people surprised when they say, hey, my accountant says I ought to buy my building? And I go, that's great, buy your building. Are you a real estate expert? No, you're a dentist. Leverage that. Now, there are exceptions, but I am not looking for exceptions. Teresa and I are looking for simplicity, probability, and leverage. So if this resonates with you, I believe you can have far more success leveraging what you already have than getting into a different area completely outside of what you know that leverages existing things. That's a long-term perspective, and that's why we're the 100-year savings solution. Money for Life is all about getting people who are long-term thinkers, and they think about saving money, not investing money. It's a very big difference between those two things. And saving money is putting money away that you know is never going to go down. You've got to have that perspective. That's simplicity, probability, and leverage. Investing is a different thing. And you also want to use simplicity, probability, and leverage for that, but you have to know the difference between those two things. Thank you for listening to Simplicity, Probability, and Leverage. As always, I'm going to give you the final word, Teresa, but as always, please let us know how you feel about these podcasts.
And the final word is, this may all be new to you. Listen to the podcast again and again, a couple times. It takes time to have it settle in your brain, to have some understanding. It's taken me years to really understand this, and more years to really put it into practice. So don't get frustrated if you're listening to these words and it's just not resonating. Give it time. And I would say, look for examples in your life where it's not simple, where you've got chaos. Look at examples in your life where you don't have a stated objective or vision, and family is one. A lot of people don't think about having a vision for their family. They have a vision for a relationship. They want to meet their Prince Charming, or, the woman of their dreams, and what that looks like, but they don't have an objective for their family or for their familial unit. And leverage, of course, the last one. Think about how you can get more out of the existing business, relationships, life that you have today without adding to it. And so until next time, be well, be safe. Thank you for listening.
You have just experienced Money for Life. Implement these strategies today and create a life by design. Have a blessed day.